So yeah, I am back with AltVerZ Zombies content, but this time with AltVerZ instead of Eclipse. I have played this game before, but then got burned out alongside the Eclipse mod, so I thought, why not give it a shot once more? And of course, I want to challenge myself as well. So here is AltVerZ, no plant food, and 4 slots. Well, not really, wink wink, challenged. The tutorial levels aren't really difficult and they're already packed with 4 slots, so there's nothing really much to say about here. I didn't even use walnut, just potato mine, pea shooter, and sunflower. And the first tutorial level is beaten without much sweat. The next level introduces us to plant food, which we pretty much will avoid using as much as possible. So we'll only be using this in challenges such as conveyor belt levels or given plant levels, as a last straw of course, because I still want to try if it's possible by only using 4 plant types. Similar to the first tutorial level, this one is easily beaten even without using plant food. The third level has the same loadout but replaces the pea shooter with repeater, but it's not really difficult nevertheless, as this is a tutorial level, and potato mine helps our early game generate a lot of sun to spam repeater later on. And for the last tutorial level, it's a conveyor belt level. I know I've said before that I'll try to see if these types of levels are beatable with only 4 plants, but with the amount of zombies spawning and the variety of plants given, I don't think it's possible. You can try, but I won't. At least I didn't use any plant foods though. The first level of Ancient Egypt isn't that difficult as well, especially when you can infinitely stall raw zombies, making the early game actually easier than the tutorial levels. And since there's no new plants, there's nothing much to say about this level. AE2 is pretty much the same but replace pea shooter now with the newly obtained cabbage bolt, and forever stall the raw zombies until they die. Ancient Egypt 3 introduces us to Tomb Raiser zombies, but we're using cabbage bolts so they don't really pose that much threat. The next plant we get though is pretty much the MVP for this world. You might be noticing right now that I am not using walnut. Well, firstly, it's because the levels are too easy to use it and kind of unnecessary. Second is that I have changed the rules. Yep, you heard me. It's actually not 4 slots, but 3. I don't know, I got bored, so why not? This challenge surely won't be that difficult, right? Anyways, now back onto the video. The 4th level introduces camel zombies, but Boomerang counters them because it pierces through 3 enemies, and also has a faster attack speed, I think. I haven't played vanilla, so correct me if I'm wrong here. However, Boomerang currently struggles on bucket heads. Other than that, the level itself isn't too difficult, for now. The 5th level introduces a new game mode in AltVerZ, where you have to break the gravestones before the final flag. And I immediately lost because I wasn't reading the instructions carefully. If you've also noticed, this level is a conveyor belt level. Now, technically I can skip this level, but like I said, I am going to attempt to beat it with only 3 plant types first. So I did that. The plants I used to beat it are pea shooter, bloomerang, and walnuts. What's unique about this level is that the graves are stored in vases, meaning I can break them slowly so that pea shooters can kill zombies whilst waiting for bloomerangs to show up on the conveyor. Basically, the strategy here is to break the vases that are farthest away from pea shooters, so that their projectiles aren't blocked by the graves. Bloomerang to help with the groups of zombies, and walnut as a protection. This level did took a couple of tries, but I still managed to beat it in the end. The 6th level introduces us to Explorer zombies, which pretty much is the second zombie that poses a threat aside from bucketheads. Since they can burn plants, it is important to put my attacking plants, which majority in this world is bloomerang, in the backside of the lawn, especially on later levels. I pretty much use sunflowers as a protection plant in these challenges because walnuts do not provide as much value whatsoever. The strategy is pretty much getting repetitive at this point simply because Bloomerang can deal with multiple waves of zombies. The 7th level introduces Tomb Raiser zombies, but the strategy is basically the same. Gravestones aren't really a problem considering Bloomerang can pierce through it, Potato Mine is also too good of an early plant to be replaced by any other instant plants. Therefore, Iceberg Lettuce and Grave Buster aren't really helpful in this challenge. The next level introduces Pharaoh Zombies. This is another tanky zombie, but thankfully Potato Mine can deal with them with ease. Other than that, there's nothing much to say about this level. The ninth level is basically all of the zombies we've encountered, but this time I decided to switch up my loadout a little bit. I replaced Potato Mine with the newly unlocked Snow Pea. There are more hordes of zombies in this level, but it is still manageable. Snow Pea helped us not rely on Potato Mines to deal with the Pharaoh zombies, while also dealing with the Explorer zombies. Basically dealing with two zombies with one plant. And now, onto the 10th level. Alas, we got to the Gargantuar level, and if you think I'm skipping this one, you're wrong. I've tried this several times, and I have finally found a solution. Instant kills or walnuts won't really give much value in this level, simply because there's too much zombies to handle even for our bloomerangs. Also, they don't show up in the conveyor belt in early stages, which is quite tough to defend with only one attacking plant type. So, I used all the attacking plants available, which are Bloomerang, Snow Pea, and Cabbage Bolt. Gargantuars are still a problem, but Snow Peas are a great help in stalling them out and pretty much stack all the attacking plants with a lane that has them. And with that, I've beaten Ancient Egypt level 10. Moving on to the next level. I had the option to go to Pirate Seas, but I've decided to complete all the worlds first. Then move on to the next one, much like how it works in the original Plants vs Zombies. Anyways, levels past the 10th level of the world introduces new tasks that you need to accomplish. For example, this level requires you to produce an X amount of sun and defeat all zombies in the final flag in an X amount of time. There aren't any new zombies introduced though, and for like the 100th time, I use Sunflower, Bloomerang, and Snow Pea for this level. You already get the gist of it. The 12th level is a do not plant and Dave's mold colonies, and Bloomerang carries again. The 13th level is the given plant level. And finally, no Bloomerang! Yay! A breath of fresh air and a break for the plant that's been carrying us in this world so far. Again, I can still skip this, but nah, I'd win. I'm not really a fan of close combat plants like Bong Choy, but I underestimated his damage. Makes sense since he costs a lot more sun in this mod. And just two of them is enough to kill a Pharaoh zombie. Electricity is pretty much like a more expensive potato mine, and I don't really need to worry about grapes since, like I said, Bong Choy deals a great amount of damage. And that's 1-13 completed. The 14th level is a conveyor level, and this is actually quite tough. The level is also a don't lose an X amount of plants, but they're pretty generous with it, which actually did come in handy in our challenge. I initially tried using Snow Pea for additional stalling, but it takes so long for it to appear in the conveyor. Also, I didn't realize in this run that Kernel Pult actually slows zombies down and has an increased chance in launching water compared to the vanilla. Therefore, I used Kernel Pult, Cabbage Bolt, and Repeater. Cabbage and Kernel are the attacking plants that appears frequently in the conveyor, and I needed them since the early stage is pretty difficult to handle. Then I chose Repeater since it is better to kill zombies quickly rather than stalling, since they might become shields for the incoming Gargantuars in the lanes. I did have to sacrifice some lawn mowers though. Overall, a pretty challenging level, but not impossible to beat with 3 plant types and no plant foods. The next level is another conveyor level, and I destroy the graves before the final wave. As usual, if I feel that I can beat it, I would. I said before that I'm not a fan of melee plants, but I also don't like plants that require additional steps to deal damage like Coconut Cannon. Okay, I am not saying Coconut Cannon is bad, I'm just saying it's not my preference. Anyways, for this challenge I used Repeater, Pea Shooter, and Bong Choy. Nothing much to say, it is actually a pretty fun challenge. Not gonna lie, this is probably my favorite game mode or challenge in this world. 1-16 is a don't spend an X amount of sun, and of course, I chose Snow Pea, Sunflower, and Bloomerang. Again. The early stage was pretty tough and I had to sacrifice one lawn mower, but it's not as difficult as the other levels, specifically the conveyor ones. 117 is pretty normal aside from the graves continuously spawning throughout the level. And it has gargantuars. I feel like I could have beaten this easier with snow pea or potato mine instead of iceberg lettuce, but hey, a win is a win. I also want to use iceberg while I can. No, not you, Gravebuster. The next level is to protect an endangered plant. And to clarify, just because an endangered plant is unlocked in our roster, which in this case is bok choy, doesn't mean that I have to pick it as one of my 3 slots. Anyways, I use Snow Pea to counter Explorer zombies, and you're not going to believe it. I actually used Bloomerang. Amazing, right? Still, I have to sacrifice some lawnmowers, but that's not really part of the challenge, so let's move on to the next level. 119 is another unique level where a cluster of sun drops from the sky but on a longer interval. And since we can't use sun producers, I've decided to use potato mine and iceberg lettuce for their low sun cost and great early game capabilities, and Bloomerang, of course. I wonder how many times I've said Bloomerang in this video, to be honest. And now, for the final level, the supposed hardest level amongst ancient Egypt. Is it possible to beat it with 3 slots only? The grand battle between plants and zombies. Who will reign above? The answer is yes. We can beat it with only sunflower, potato mine, and Bloomerang. I was literally banging on the music because it is so lit, and then I realized I had already beaten the level. It was kind of anticlimactic, but oh well. And that's part 1 of this series, yay! Stay tuned for Pirate Seas, which hopefully will be uploaded next week, and that's it. Peace.